there's a way to make an entrance.
This is my destiny.
It was now a conspiracy of witches.
Download Veely today.
Today, we take you into the heart of Brazil, amid the forests of Minas Gerais, a legendary region known for its gold and emerald mines. This is the home of Inhotim, a garden remarkable for its oversized artworks, rivaled only by those of nature herself. In the 1980s, a wealthy Brazilian industrialist, Bernardo Paz, grew concerned by the unrelenting advance of deforestation. The billionaire decided to purchase a vast expanse of forest, fields and prairies in order to create a huge park. A large area of the Minas Gerais forest was thereby saved by the creation of Inhotim, a gigantic park devoted to contemporary art as well as a botanical garden. We're going to discover the garden with an enthusiastic green team as our guides. Marta Mestre, curator, Pedro Nering, landscape designer, Juliano Borin, agronomist, and last but not least, Bernardo Paz himself, the famous billionaire.
I was nostalgic for my childhood in my grandparents' and uncles' houses, which were on large farms. I had a business that made comfortable profits, and I took advantage of the increase in the prices of the natural resources I had. And I built Inhotim as it is today.
Paradoxically, Bernardo Paz's fortune was built on mining, which contributed to the region's destruction. But in recent years, the Brazilian iron ore magnate has invested the lion's share of his colossal fortune in renovating 2,000 hectares of forest and creating the 140-hectare Inhotim garden in its center. The garden is open to the public and can be visited on foot or by electric cart. Throughout the park, one discovers Bernardo Paz's contemporary art collection, representing the greatest contemporary artists with over 500 sculptures on display outdoors amid the exotic plants, or inside the garden's 20 pavilion galleries.
My goal initially was philosophical. I love beauty. And the most sublime beauty is found in nature. If you cooperate with nature, you can render this beauty even more spectacular. It increases your quality of life and your pleasure.
It's hard to imagine that just a few years ago, this land of plenty was a region ravaged by an open-pit mine. Since then, artificial lakes have been created with water that's been tinted an emerald green with organic dye to counter the reddish hue of iron ore. Everything here seems to bespeak of a natural relationship with the environment, when in fact, the jungle we see was created from scratch. The gardens, lakes and plants were all redrawn by landscape designer Pedro Nering.
People sometimes ask why I created the garden like this, with such an exuberance of different flowers, foliage, and palm trees that look so natural that they blend right in with nature. That's precisely how my style is defined. We arrange the plants in a way that looks natural. Then they take over and flourish according to their own rhythm, like this plant we put here. It grew like a jazz rhythm, sprouted up here. All this is a creation that happens on the spot. We dig lakes, plant palms, and large trees, and then we compose with the colors of the foliage and flowers. Everything is carried out right here on site. I don't design it beforehand. I go to sleep thinking about it, and the next day I wake up and do it.
Another Brazilian landscape artist, Roberto Burl Marx, who passed away in 1994, was the inspiration for Bernardo Paz's idea to associate art and nature in a park. Burl Marx would design his gardens like paintings.
I met Roberto Burl Marx in 1987, and we became close friends. He took me to almost every garden he designed in Brazil. I'd already begun working on my own garden, and he said he would help.
Roberto Burl Marx was one of Brazil's central figures when it came to landscape architecture. His works in Rio de Janeiro form a genuine open-air museum of his art and inimitable style. He was the first to accentuate Brazil's native vegetation in his gardens, thereby contributing to the reputation of his country's botany. Thanks to him, visitors can admire the elegance of Brazil's tropical plant life. Roberto Burl Marx himself designed the layout for these paths, which are the oldest in the park. The concept of Inhotim is based on the labyrinth. The winding, branching paths offer several different routes. As we wander along the paths, we stumble upon artworks by surprise, hidden in the vegetation. The fact that the galleries and artworks are hidden in the middle of the forest makes experiencing Inhotim a real adventure. The best way to visit the park is to get lost in it. The idea of the labyrinth inspired the landscape artists as well as the architects who designed the garden's 20 art galleries. The paths between them were conceived so that visitors could move easily from garden to gallery, thus passing seamlessly from nature to art and from art to nature.
Another idea at Inhotim
was not to have any signage. That meant visitors could ramble and wander about from one side of the garden to the other, getting lost and encountering the art and botanical species in a completely random way. I'm in charge of programming at Inhotim, accompanying the artists and looking after the artworks and the pavilions.
Do cuidado com as obras, do cuidado com os pavilhões. Nós estamos aqui na Galeria Psicoativa.
Here, we're in the Psychoactive Gallery by the artist Tunga, who has 2 pavilions at Inhotim. The gallery was inaugurated in 2012 and is one of the largest we have. What's special about it is that it's not surrounded by gardens, but the Atlantic forest.
Isso cria efeito muito particular
no modo como a luz entra e no modo como toda a ambiência ela gera efeito muito bonito na relação entre o interior e o exterior.
Somewhere within the labyrinth lies the home of Bernardo Paz. The emperor of Inhotim lives here in the midst of the artworks, in a location that is a carefully guarded secret.
You cannot always put a very large work in the middle of a city. It's not like a painting you can hang on the wall.
Parque ou museu como Inhotim, ele é sempre desafio para os artistas.
A museum like Inhotim is always a challenge for artists. One of the constraints in contemporary art is often the dimension of museums.
Aqui no Inhotim, essas escalas
Here
arquitetônicas elas
in
não
Inhotim,
existem, não é?
these architectural scales
Nós
don't
estamos aqui
exist.
trabalhando com
We can
escalas
welcome
fora dos
artworks
padrões
that fall outside of museum
ou
or
fora dos
gallery
padrões
standards.
galerísticos. Para
For
artista,
artists,
isso é
that opens up an enormous
muito
space in
grande
their
na sua
minds,
imaginação.
the
Ele é
possibility to imagine
possibilidade
whatever they
de dar
want.
asas à imaginação.
What strikes me most is the contemporary artist's ability to criticize the past, the present, or the future in every aspect, dogmatic, religious, or political. And their way of doing so is intelligent and subtle.
Immensa is perhaps the most politically engaged work in Bernardo Paz's collection. This mysterious pyramid in rusted steel has a message.
For Cildo Meirelles,
Immensa is a political composition. It starts with the object, then multiplies it. It's the possibility of multiplication, but also that of usurpation. It's a criticism of capitalism, where the smallest are subjected to the largest. Slavery in Brazil is a tragedy that extended for nearly 4 centuries. Among Inhotim's 70 gardeners, several of them are quilombos, in other words, descendants of slaves who worked in the region's gold mines and plantations. In the 18th century, the quilombos escaped and sought refuge in the forest, banding together to form rural communities. My grandfather met my grandmother in a farm where there were descendants of slaves. My grandmother had a garden at home. We'd enjoy helping her by watering her plants. We also would go into the field with her because there was no one at home to look after us. I belong to a group called Black for Black, but there are others, like Congado, a tradition of slaves who came from Mozambique. Inhotim gives us and other young people the opportunity to work in the region.
Eu sou engenheiro agrônomo do parque.
I'm the agronomist of the park.
Então, dos meus trabalhos principais aqui no Inhotim é ajudar a manter o jardim bonito e as plantas saudáveis.
To make sure the plants and garden stay healthy.
Disso, identificar a planta doente, praga e fazer o combate efetivo dela e de forma também que não degrade o meio ambiente. Essas plantas são plantas monumentais também.
Pedro Nering spent 6 months scouring the nurseries of Brazil, looking for the most beautiful elephant's foot palms.
Para procurar as melhores patas de elefante.
Brazil has some of the greatest biodiversity of any place on Earth. Since 2011, 4,500 plant species have been inventoried in Inhotim, including 1,300 kinds of palms, making it the largest palm tree collection in the world.
So to become a botanical garden, we've been more thorough and have made an inventory of all the species. Each year we discover new plants in Brazil. We even discovered new palm trees. Last year, 2 new palms were discovered, and botanists are preparing their descriptions to give them a scientific name.
A Socratia
This is the Socratea exoriza,
uma palmeira que tem raízes aéreas.
a palm tree with
E dá a
stilt roots,
impressão que
like legs.
são pernas que ela tem, parece que
It
ela
looks
está
like it's
andando.
walking,
A gente deu apelido
which
para
is why
ela
it's
de
called a
palmeira que
walking
anda.
palm.
Essa é uma planta escultural.
sculptural
Eu acho que
plant.
essas plantas esculturais que
The type of
parece
plant
que é
that
uma
looks
obra de
both like a
arte,
work of
parece
art
que
and a living
é uma
thing.
coisa viva, mas foi feita na mão.
While countless visual artists look to nature for inspiration, Giuseppe Pennone stands apart for his artworks that closely blend art and nature. This tree is actually a bronze sculpture held aloft by 4 real live trees.
Tudo isso está em permanente
This work is
transformação
constantly
também,
changing,
porque daqui a uns
because
anos
in a
essas
few
árvores elas
years,
vão
these
estar
trees will lift the tree sculpture even
a
higher.
árvore em escultura, não é? Então,
What is the
como nós temos
relationship
aqui uma
between
relação
nature
entre
and
natureza e
culture?
cultura,
Which is real, which is
qual é o
false?
verdadeiro e qual é o
What
falso?
is real,
O
what
que é o
is false?
verdadeiro e o falso, não é?
Bernardo Paz designed Inhotim like an immense painting, where the vegetation can sometimes appear straight from another era. In this area of the garden, lush octopus agaves look like infinite variations of the same sculpture.
muitos agaves também. A gente tem agave
This
polvo
plant
aqui, que é o
is an
agave
agave
vilmoriana. Ela também tem
Its leaves
as
look like
folhas
the
dela
tentacles
têm
of an
formas,
octopus,
parece os
which is why it's
tentáculos
called the
de um
octopus
polvo.
agave.
Então a gente deu esse apelido também de agave polvo. Essas
plants
plantas
look
são
like
plantas que
actual
parecem
works of
obras de
art.
arte, de verdade.
Eu gosto daquela planta
I like
agave
the octopus
polvo.
agave. It has
É
a
uma
very
planta muito
Jurassic look
jurássica,
about
ela é
it.
uma espécie sobrevivente.
It reminds me of the
Como se
plants
fosse
that
uma planta
existed
que
before
vem
man
do
did,
tempo dos
a
dinossauros.
remnant of the
Então
dinosaur
faz-me
era.
lembrar que aqui no Inhotim,
It also reminds
antes
me
de
that plants were here
existirem os
before we
homens,
were.
existiam essas
And when I
plantas.
look at it, it also
Sobrevivência
makes me realize that
das
plants will
plantas para
outlive
além dos
us.
homens.
In Inhotim, plants are works of art, but it is the artist's works and installations that allow us to rediscover them. Olafur Eliasson designed this giant kaleidoscope in a way that incorporates nature right into the artwork.
Viewing machine de Olafur
Eliasson's viewing
talvez
machine
trabalhos,
is one
uma
of the
das
most
obras aqui
appreciated, most
mais
visited,
visitados
and most
e também mais
photographed works in
fotografados.
the entire
Por
park.
lado, é ponto de
It
vista na
offers a view of the
paisagem,
landscape, but it
mas ao
also
mesmo
alters our
tempo ele é
perception of
alterador
it,
da
like a
percepção. Ele
psychotropic
é quase como
substance.
psicotrópico. Ele é só
It's a refracted
espelho,
mirror.
e é espelho
It gives
refratado,
us many
dá-nos
different
uma
points of view of
multiplicidade
nature.
de ponto de vista sobre a
In that
natureza. Eu
sense,
penso que é
it's a
trabalho
highly
muito contemporâneo
contemporary
nesse
work of art.
sentido.
It puts
Ele
our view of the
relativiza
world into
a ideia que nós
perspective.
temos sobre o mundo.
Along the shore of Lake Mexico, Magic Square No. 5 is one of 6 works by Elio Oitikika. The artist did not build the work himself during his lifetime. It was put together posthumously using his detailed notes and drawings. The work maintains his ambitious project to create links between art and the public by offering visitors a zone of conviviality.
É muito bonito, é muito incrível, e aí de repente você tá andando e você encontra uma surpresa, tem uma obra de arte lá. E as obras de arte estão todas misturadas na natureza. Tem uma interação muito grande entre elas. E assim, você pode parar, tirar uma foto, descansar, olhar para o lado, tem uma estátua, tem uma imagem, tem uma galeria, tem uma arquitetura incrível.
And that's wonderful.
E isso é
A day
maravilhoso.
spent here is an amazing experience.
Sim, tem muitos lugares aqui que dá para você se
There are lots
divertir,
of
né? As
opportunities
obras,
to enjoy yourself
elas
here.
têm um
All the
significado,
artworks
elas
have
têm alguma
meaning.
coisa
They've
a
got something to
dizer,
say,
elas têm uma história
and
a
you can
contar, mas
interact with them.
pode, tipo, tal. Então,
It's
assim, dá
very
para interagir
interesting.
com as
That's
obras.
what's
Isso é
magical
muito
about this
interessante,
place.
é muito mágico desse lugar.
Sometimes, the art escapes the garden to lure visitors even deeper into the forest. Along the edges of the park, this installation reflects the environmental concerns of its artist, Matthew Barney. Beneath the geodesic dome, made of steel and glass, the artist weaves a complex tale exploring the clash between technology and the forces of nature.
A história do Brasil começa com uma história de desmatamento, quando chegam os primeiros portugueses aqui. E hoje em dia, isso é um problema. Esse problema ele ganhou uma proporção política e uma dimensão artística, uma dimensão estética. E isso aqui representa exatamente o Inhotim materializa essa preocupação dos artistas com o problema do desmatamento.
O desmatamento é crime.
Deforestation is a crime.
Ele não deveria existir.
It shouldn't exist.
Do pressuposto que
If you ask me,
isso
it's
vai
going to
acabar
stop quickly.
rapidamente.
When the
À
land is
medida
no longer
que essas
profitable,
terras não
the
sejam mais
forest will gain the upper
econômicas,
hand
a
once more.
floresta volta. Nós estamos nesse
We're in
processo
this
de
transition
transição.
period.
O que é necessário
What
é
we
mudar
need
a
to do
cabeça
is
dos
change the
políticos.
mentality of politicians.
Não adianta abrir
It serves no
floresta
purpose to clear
de milhares
thousands
e
and
milhares
thousands
de
of
hectares
hectares
para
of
plantar
forest to
soja,
plant soybeans,
porque
because
você
we
não
shouldn't
vai
be eating
comer
soy.
soja. Você vai comer um
We
alimento
should be
mais
eating
saudável.
healthier foods.
E você só tem uma
There is
maneira
only
de
one way to eliminate
eliminar o
deforestation.
desflorestamento. É
And that
eliminar
is
a
to eliminate the
economicidade
economic model that is
que vai
responsible for
substituir
it.
aquela devastação.
Perched on the highest hill of the park, one artwork overlooks the forests of Minas Gerais. In 2008, artist Chris Burden dropped these metal beams that came from iron mines in the region. These 70 beams mark Bernardo Paz's territory and dominate this part of the Cerrado, which is now protected. The region still contains 15 million hectares of untouched land, but this has come under threat by the advancement of soy farming. Drastic deforestation is foreseen in the near future, which will irremediably damage this ecosystem. The Cerrado is still home to 5% of the world's biodiversity.
Para até fazer corredor ecológico,
in certain areas, we had to replant in order to create a wildlife corridor.
Reserva particular do patrimônio
natural, two zones of forest,
em duas áreas
two private reserves of natural heritage that are separated.
Vai fazer como
So we're going to create an ecological corridor to link these two zones,
e você
so
fazendo
animals
esse
can move
corredor,
freely between them.
você consegue fazer que os animais tenham acesso
We're
a
also
outra
going to
área.
expand the
E
animals'
você aumenta
habitats.
a área de habitação desses animais.
There are 6 themed gardens in Inhotim. Pedro Nering has decided to show us the Garden of Paths. Made entirely up of plants from the Cerrado, the path leads us on a discovery of the highly dense vegetation that is typical of the region.
To create this garden, we looked at the topography of the land and followed its hills. We planted trees, palm trees, aquatic plants, and trees that like water. See the foliage climbing up the palm trees? All that is typical of the region's flora. The scientific name of this plant is Colocasia esculenta, which here in Brazil we call the purple taro because of its color. This plant flourishes alongside the water. It stands out for its color, and it's very sturdy. That's why we used it a lot here. The foliage also creates shady spots where people can rest on the benches that artist Hugo França created out of tree roots. Here in our tropical country, where temperatures hit 35 degrees in the summer, shade is necessary if we want to be able to stroll through the park.
Right in the middle of the park, we find the garden's emblematic tree. This majestic Timbo Colorado, or Pacara earpod tree, gets its name in reference to its dark curved seed-pods that look like ears.
These are the seeds of this earpod tree. From just a tiny seed like this, you get an enormous tree like that. You just have to live 100 years to see for yourself. The monumental size of this tree helps us raise people's awareness. Many city dwellers have never seen a tree this size before. When they come here, they're awestruck. Then we can talk to them and further their environmental education. This is one of the biggest trees, but there's one that's bigger yet, the Jequitibá.
For many people, this is a finished project. But for me, Inhotim is just a seedling. I want it to become a lifelong project for as many people as possible. I want it to be an inspiration for other places. I want people to live here and derive pleasure from it. We've dug a tunnel through to the other side of the mountain, where small villages will be built, with small gardens so that they can become self-sufficient. Only small electric cars will be allowed to enter. The houses will produce their own energy. They will have access to drinking water, and there'll be a sewage system. Agronomists will help inhabitants create their own vegetable gardens.
Bernardo Paz has initiated projects that will last the next 50 or even 100 years. Back in the 1980s, when he created his garden, no one would ever have imagined the project would have such scope or employ 800 locals from the region. Inhotim has surpassed the bounds of fantasy and turned this iron ore industrialist into an idealist infatuated with art and nature. Only the park's earpod tree will be able to know if Bernardo Paz keeps his word.
People may speak ill of me. I've no doubt made mistakes in my life, but no one can speak ill of Inhotim.